Hi, I'm Natalia Munoz, the news director for Holyoke Media. I'm here with Johan Vega, who is the media engagement director, and State Rep Aaron Vega from Holyoke. Thank you, State Rep, for being with us. I would like to start off with asking you about you sent a newsletter out to constituents, to others recently, talking about the pandemic and specifically about unemployment. There's still a lot of confusion about who is eligible to apply for unemployment, and at the same time, there's some delays in getting the information to the unemployment office. Can you please?
Sure, sure. So my office, and so thank you, for this opportunity, of course, and happy to engage and get as much information as we can, which is why we're doing social media and why we're doing our newsletter, and because there's literally new information every day, and so I think one thing to keep in mind is that. Those of us as elected officials are still learning this too, with everybody out there. So often when we get a constituent phone call, it motivates us, Pat Duffy and myself, to figure it out. So we're figuring it out along with a lot of people because you've basically got federal programs coming through with the CARES Act, and you've got a lot of state and federal regulations around, especially around unemployment. So we know that the first round of unemployment increases through the CARES Act, gave people more time, right? 39 weeks instead of the traditional less time. And an extra $600 a week. And that was important, I think, to recognize that a lot of people, especially people who lost their jobs recently in the gig economy and the self-employed, they may have had one or two jobs, W-2, right? They work at a restaurant, so they get taxed, everything like that. But they had a lot of 1099 jobs as well. So that $600 was hopefully going to cover some of that. This new sort of state program, the pandemic unemployment assistance, is trying to go back to that group of people who predominantly are independent self-employed, gig workers, and give them support. And so with that, two things to think about. One, this is something we heard right from the beginning of the pandemic and the crisis, and we knew we had to get there. So it took us a while to get there, lots to figure out. Additionally, those people that are in that world, they're really going to watch those details, because if you get $5,100 of W-2 employment, you cannot qualify for the pandemic unemployment assistance. So even if 90%, you make $100,000 a year doing different gigs, you're a film editor. I used to be a film editor, right? So like you guys, and it was the next gig to the next gig, right? But occasionally you get some job that paid, taxes and gave you a W-2. So if you get $5,100 through a W-2, you cannot qualify for the pandemic unemployment assistance. So that's a really important thing to note. So it's really about people who predominantly get, really self-employed who don't get any W-2 employment. The state and the COVID Command Center is trying to look at an additional program as well. The other thing that's causing a lot of delays on this, obviously with the first round, keep in mind that 650,000 people in Massachusetts have applied for unemployment insurance since mid-March. 650,000 people, right? So the system was backlogged, especially when you take the sort of pre-existing condition situation out of it and you're not making people look for jobs, and so everyone just kind of qualified, it just flooded the system. So it took a while to get people hired. And so I think you have a lot of people who are on the phone lines now that don't understand all the nuances. And I think, again, for the people in the gig economy and those independent self-employed people, a lot of times we do commerce across state lines. That's getting even more complicated. We have a couple of constituents that do a lot of work, in Connecticut or New York, and it's becoming even more complicated because those systems all don't interact and they don't talk well together. So you've got technology as a hurdle, and you've got other hurdles. I think the last thing I'll say, until we can dig in deeper, but the good thing is that once people are filed, even if it takes 6 weeks or longer to get that first check, it is retroactive. So it will be made up. It doesn't relieve much stress or tension and frustration for people when they're going through this on a day-to-day situation, but at least keep that in mind that, that's why it was really important to get that filed in early, that claim in early, because it will be retroactive.
That's a very important point. that at least they will get some money retroactively.
Yeah.
Following up on what you're saying, how you represent all of Holyoke.
Mm.
How do you measure how Holyoke is doing through this pandemic in terms of as a community of people who are wearing masks, who are being careful, the educational system? What's your take on how your district is doing?
I think a couple of things. I think you can measure it. I think if you look at the data, Hampden County does have some numbers, some high numbers. Holyoke has some high numbers. When you get into the data, as you know, a lot of that is in our nursing home population. So I do think if you take the community at large, there's one way to look at it. If you kind of take the nursing home numbers out of it, I think that we've done a fairly good job of social distancing. Our hospitals have not been overwhelmed. Western Mass in general, Bay State, Mercy, Holyoke Medical Center, Cooley, have all been doing a great job. We have a weekly call with them. They've got capacity. So, we early on here in Western Mass flattened that curve, which is just making this go on longer, right? Which is technically a good thing because you can handle it. So I do think the community has done a good job. I think we were first out there through Dr. Zrike and Holyoke Public School teams to address food issues. I'm on a daily call with my colleagues. There's some cities in this Commonwealth that are not doing the food program that we're doing here in Holyoke. Not even close. There are still schools not handing out food. So that's just unbelievable. I know that when, I say this, when Dr. Zrike we first started talking about the schools closing that first time, it was food insecurity issues was the first thing that came up. So I think we're trying to address the issues. We know our vulnerable population in Holyoke, right? They're not hidden. We have our social service agencies right on Main Street, right on High Street. They're not hidden in some back rooms. These are, we have a very strong social net here. So I think that we have been addressing that population fairly well. I keep continuing to be concerned about this new group of vulnerable population, those gig economy people, the people that are waiting 6 weeks for the unemployment check, the people who don't know how to navigate that system. They don't understand where food pickup was, what they might qualify for, because 6 weeks ago, they didn't qualify for anything, right? And they were the working poor, right? We, many of us, living paycheck to paycheck, just knowing usually you have another paycheck coming. Now you don't. If you're a family of three making $42,000 in Western Mass, you're struggling, but you don't qualify for anything. So, that's why we passed legislation on foreclosures, making sure you can't be foreclosed upon, and, make sure you can't, your mortgages aren't going to be kicking you out. You can't, you're not going to lose your home. That's why we're putting more money, out there and through Mass Health and all kinds of places. So I think overall, we're doing okay, but obviously I think that there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of tension, there's already been a lot of depression and anxiety in our community already. The schools leading a task force on addressing the mental health issues that we're experiencing now and are going to experience through this transition and then probably experience, this fall. My heart gets heavy when I think about, and I know, having been the vice chair of Children and Families for 6 years, the vice chair of Children and Families Committee at the state level, the fact that our 51A reporting has gone down so dramatically doesn't mean all of a sudden that kids are not being neglected or abused. It means that the teachers and the clergy and the doctors and the community workers that would see those kids and make those reports aren't seeing those kids. So that is really making me nervous right now about how we're going to transition out of that, which is just one of the many reasons why I hope that we are able to have a summer school program to get those kids back into the public, back into being supported, give some of the families the supports they need, especially as these families with special needs kids or multiple kids in the home. My wife and I, we have one kid at home. He's 6. It's a lot of work, but we're lucky. Some of these families that are bigger in small places, I can only imagine.
I keep thinking about concerns about the 51A's reporting being low and how this is not really the indication that any type of abuse is actually going in decline. It's just that it's not being reported because of isolation. I got the chance to speak this morning actually with the head of the Office for Children Advocacy, and they were talking about the importance of being more proactive in terms of reporting any suspicious activity or anything that it could be a lead to identify any possible abuse or neglect. What do you think as a community we can do here in Holyoke, knowing that there are plenty of cases of families that have involvement with the Department of Children and Family?
Yeah, I think that a couple of things. I think that we're trying to, again, from the state level, we're trying to increase the funding and support that the caseworkers have to reconnect with families that are already in the system. We're doing the Zoom technology. We've taken it for granted, right? We're on 3 or 4 Zoom meetings a day. We've got cell phones. We have all this internet access. Not everybody has that. So again, and then you're in a situation where we're not supposed to be going door to door. So caseworkers shouldn't be going to people's homes. So it makes it that much more complicated. It's going to be, again, all of us coming together and again with those social service agencies, right? The enlaces and the Gandaras and the service nets, that as this transitions to where there is some more interaction, whatever that starts to look like, that they're at the forefront to ensure that the families are okay, they're coming out of that. I'm worried for sure. And even again, if it's not physical abuse, it's just neglect, it's lack of interaction. We already know places like Holyoke have such a, intense time around summer learning loss. And now imagine adding 3 more months to that. Right. So I think that it's something that we're all talking about. It's again, one of those weekly conversations that we're having. And I think a lot of us, again, look to those social service agencies that are doing the work already and how we can support them. And it's important to note that, places like Women's Shelter Compañeros is still working, right? I mean, they are still out there protecting women and filing restraining orders, for getting kids out of dangerous situations. It's not like they've closed down, right? It's important to know that Jane Doe and all the domestic violence resources across the state are still out there, and they are not slowing down. So it's important to note that. But yeah, it's going to be something that it's unprecedented. We're going to have to address, right off the bat. And again, that's why I hope that when people talk about summer school, it's not just, oh, you're in summer school because you have to catch up on your grades. Last year we had over 1,000 kids in the summer school in Holyoke Public Schools. So that's 1/5 of the students, and it's an enriching experience, right? It does let kids close the education gap, but again, it keeps those social interactions. And so many of our families during regular times aren't going away on summer vacation for the whole summer. They aren't able to bring their kids to museums and have those social and enrichment activities. So, and interact with other kids even. So I think that, the hope that there's a robust summer program, if we can bring people together, will get those social connections, allow us to address the mental health issues for the children and the families, and as well try to close that achievement gap that we go into for next year.
Representative, speaking of children and how vulnerable so many children are in the city, and then I tie this to education. We have a receiver, Dr. Steven Zrike, who has been extraordinary, a leader in public education here. His time is coming up. He's leaving in June. Someone else is going to come. We have no idea who, not even the school committee. Johan has a report out that they're writing a letter to the commissioner, Jeff Riley, asking him what's going on. And this is where it becomes really important, too. I'm going to tie this all together. Is that it's because of Dr. Zrike, there is a food program in the schools. Families can go to the schools and pick up food, breakfast and lunch for their children. And that's the kind of superintendent he is. There are other superintendents, obviously, because you look at other school districts where this is not happening, who are saying no for whatever reasons. So what, in terms of the next receiver who's coming in, what information have you received or what feedback have you been able to give back to the commissioner about who you want to be the leader of the schools?
Yeah. No, great question. And I know Dr. Zrike, is I don't want to use the word conflicted, but, his heart is in a different place now that this has happened. I mean, I think that all of us, might have made some different decisions 3 months ago about the future of our lives if we knew this was coming, but of course we didn't. So, and he is going to stay committed to our kids until he does leave. So I've both talked to Russell Johnston. I've talked to the commissioner a number of times over the last few months, even before this COVID-19, obviously. And I think, and again, not that the commissioner does everything that everyone agrees with. No one in leadership does, right? But I think he's made some good decisions during this crisis. He knows that the plan in place in Holyoke was making progress. They see that. Whether you look at the raw data on the graduation and MCAS numbers, or you just, you talk to the people and you those anecdotal stories, right? Progress was being made. This is obviously a big hit to that progress. I know that they were looking for a superintendent receiver who, for lack of I'm paraphrasing here, but doesn't need to make a name for themselves, right? The plan is in place. We're looking for the fifth inning pitcher, right? To use a sports metaphor. We're not starting a new game. This is the game. We need someone to come in and win this game, right? And finish this game and implement the things. Doesn't mean there's still more things that don't need to be changed, and there's some things that still need fixing, of course. But for the most part, the education plan is in place. That's being used, right? Going back to K to 5 model, right? The focus on early education, the partnerships that we've created, around early education with VOC and around our art partners with Springfield Music School and Chance Circle Theater and Homework House and the Girls Inc. and the list goes on and on. You know them all. You talk to them all the time. That's not going to change. The team that's in place up there, Aaron and Jose Bo and all these great people up there are going to stay. Right. I mean, so we're not going to have the mass exodus, which is always, sometimes a fear when a leader leaves. They're committed. Mickey Buell, of course, with the Opportunity Academy stuff. Right. So, I mean, these people are staying. These people are committed. It's going to take a receiver that wants to move this along and get to the finish line. And I hope that, and they've heard that and they realize that. It's going to hopefully be someone who has some understanding of a district like Holyoke. I envision, when the person is appointed, that the next 6-7 months, the remainder of this year, I'll be doing whatever I can to bring that person to meet all those partners I just mentioned, to go out into the community, right? I'll be doing my part, as I always do, like I did with Christina Royal from HCC, right? It's like, okay, here's who the players are. Let's get you to know everybody. So that person hit the ground running, but again, I think that the team's in place. Secondly, I would say, even though there's going to be probably a delay on implementation, and unfortunately probably somewhat of a delay on some of the funding with the Student Opportunity Act, again, a 3 to 5 year plan has been sort of sketched out, right? So we know we want to have more arts integration. We know we're talking about getting an arts integration advisor, into our district, that's, and all the teachers want to see more of that. We want to build our robust music program we have at the high school. We want to bring it down to the lower grades. So that stuff's already in place. So I'm imagining and hoping that the commissioner has brought that to whoever they're interviewing, saying, this is what we're interested in, right? We might be building a new school, right? We want to expand an arts program. Do you have experience in this? Let's bring you into this situation.
Yeah, no, it's really, really exciting to see this much planning going on, and again, it's something that I want to commend Dr. Zrike on being so proactive, making sure that basically his legacy on making sure the opportunities for the students in Holyoke Public Schools are there, even though he will not continue operating as the superintendent receiver. And yeah, I guess one of the biggest concerns right now in the city is that people want to make sure that all this work doesn't get lost because of the transition of a new leadership.
Yeah, I think it's important that there will be some transition time, hopefully, with this new person, right? I mean, school calendars be what they are, but I'm hoping that there'll be that month of June where the new person will be able to be here with Dr. Zrike. And I think, the other thing, and we don't need to go down this path too much. We talked about it. You guys did a great job reporting it. But, another thing, people say, what's it going to take to get out of receivership, right? Well, it's not Dr. Zrike leaving. We are in receivership for another 3 years at minimum. Let's just, as best we can, move on from that argument. Unfortunately, I think there'll be some more, intense voices coming up over the next couple of weeks once a new receiver is appointed. But that said, and it's been said to me, the commissioner's also looking at how a community comes together around a district, right? So you see the community partners, the organizations on board, but is the community on board with public education? I still think that's going to be, sort of that last hurdle where everyone comes together and is supporting the public schools. And that's going to help move us out of receivership and back into local control when we're ready. I think that's important to note that a lot of new systems have been in place. There's a lot of teacher turnover that we've got to still address. I think when there's more stability and more support community-wide.
We're learning very hard lessons about nursing homes and how they're run. Is the legislature, is there a committee looking at that, creating a new set of regulations to make sure that what happened at the Holyoke Soldiers Home doesn't happen again?
Yeah, we're absolutely looking at new regulations, new supports. I mean, you've seen obviously $130 million going forward into nursing homes to be put towards additional staffing, training, and PPE, personal protective equipment, and other safeguards for employees. The biggest issue around nursing homes is the unattainable, unsupported employment. They're underpaid, and they're typically working at more than one facility. 2 days into the school closure, I was at the park with Odin before they closed the parks, and another woman was there. And we kept our distance, and the kids were kind of playing a little bit. And she worked at a nursing home, and she was in between jobs. She had an hour home in between her morning job, and she was home for her family for lunch, and then she was going back to her night job. Younger woman, may have tested positive during this, may have never shown a sign. They're going in and out of that building. One of the issues I have at the Soldiers Home was that so many of the temp employees that were brought in through temp agencies were getting sick, were not coming into work, or were overworked, or said, this is a bad situation, I'm not going in, right? They weren't as dedicated perhaps in some ways, right? They were protecting themselves, which is good too. So that's one of the big issues, I think, is that we've been talking for the last 6 years about enough pay to stay, and that looks at the social service industry around nursing homes, caring for adult disability individuals, day programs, right? PCAs, CNAs, all these things that we are frontline workers that we all want to praise and thank, which they deserve, but they're underpaid. And they're the ones doing the real work. And when you have an epidemic like this come out, I'm no scientist, but I've been reading a lot, as all of you, when you have those employees coming in and out of those places, right? And, being tired, not being in best of health because they're overworked, being stressed, they're already in an economically disadvantaged situation. They're already probably compromised health as well, perhaps themselves. And they're going in and out of these facilities. And that's what moved that disease, I think, so quickly in some of these nursing homes. We saw, I think it was, it might've been Cambridge or Somerville, one of the towns right around Boston, one of the cities, their employees decided to go on 12-hour shifts, or no, I think 24-hour shifts. So that they would be at the place for 24 hours and then change. So they would not, they would have less time going to different locations and less opportunity to bring the disease in. So yeah, we're going to definitely look at that, but I think it's going to come down to, again, supporting these people who get the training to do this job and support them, with a living wage, with health insurance, to make sure that they can keep doing the work that they're doing. That's going to be the biggest thing, I think. And then I think the second thing will be making sure that nursing homes have PPE. I mean, I think that the realization that suddenly this idea, and this is going to be the reality, if we're going to be wearing masks out in public, but we're going to get back to caseworkers, we're going to get back to day programs, these day programs, these places where people are coming in and out, it's just going to become more, and maybe it should have been for a long time, right? Maybe when people are going into a nursing home, they should have been wearing a mask because we never know what people are bringing in, right? The common sense about washing your hands. I mean, who knew this was going to be the headline that people have to get taught how to wash hands, right? As someone in political office, I always kept kind of a disinfectant in my, a little Perel in my pocket because you're always shaking a lot of hands anyways, right? But maybe this is just more normal practice that has to happen. So again, making sure that, our nursing homes have the PPE, making sure that people are properly trained on how to use it and how to dispose of it is going to be critical. And I think, not just for nursing homes, but probably, in general, technology is going to change a lot of the way we interact. And perhaps, it's no longer going to make sense to have 30 members of the family come to the nursing home to celebrate grandma's 100th birthday. Maybe it's going to be a little bit more, 2 or 3 family members show up physically and you're on the iPad. And that's just going to have to become normal practice.